6 through 8, but I'm going to read for you 3 through 8. Is that all right? I'm going to read for you 3 through 8. Once you have it, say dog years. 2 Samuel, chapter 9. I'm going to read for you 3 through 8, but we're going to be focusing on 6 through 8. Is that all right? Then the king said, is there not still someone of the house of Saul? It's good to me already. To whom I may show the kindness of God. And Ziba said to the king, there is still a son of Jonathan who is lame in his feet. So the king said to him, where is he? And Ziba said to the king, indeed, he is in the house of Machir, the son of Ammiel, in Lo-debar. Verse 5, then David sent and brought him out to the house of Machir, and the son of Ammiel from Lo-debar. Here's where it gets good. Now when Mephibosheth, say Mephibosheth, we're going to call him me. Yeah, anyway, it'll get to you. So now when me, the son of Jonathan, the son of Saul, had come to David, he fell on his face and prostrated himself. Then David said, me, and he answered, here is your servant. Because me is a servant of the king. Yeah, I'll get to it in a minute. He said, here's your servant. David said to him, do not fear, for I will surely show you kindness. This is what the king's saying. The king is saying this to me. Say, the king is saying this to me. We'll get there. The king is saying this to me. He said, I will surely show you kindness for Jonathan, your father's sake, and I will restore to you all the land of Saul, your grandfather. And you shall eat bread at my table continually. You shall eat bread at my table continually. Then he bowed himself and said, what is your servant that you should look upon such a dead dog as I? Take your seats. Somebody say dog years. Oh my goodness. He said, what is your servant that you should look upon such a dead dog as I? Mephibosheth has impediments. He's got emotional, physical, and possibly sociological, impediments. He's been ostracized. He's been cast out. He's not in the kingdom. I just want to talk about me for a little bit. He's not in the kingdom. He's been ostracized, and he has a few impediments. He's unable in his natural body. Yes, somebody did drop him when he was a baby. I just want to take a little tangent real quick. Sometimes the injuries that we endure are not caused by ourselves. So some of the injuries that we endure are not caused by ourselves. Now, he didn't do anything. He was just dropped because somebody was trying to skedaddle out of town, if you would. But it happened, and because of this, he had an impediment. He had emotional impediments. He saw himself as a dog. He said, now the kingdom called him. Say, the king called him. Y'all gonna have to talk to me today. The king called him. The king called him, but he still felt like a dog. I want to talk to some real believers in here that know they've been called by the king, but still felt like a dog. I'm going to talk to this side if y'all going to talk to me. How many people have been called by the king, but still felt like a dog? He was called by the king. The king sent for him. The king sent for him, but he was lame. When the king sent for you, you were broken too. I just want to talk to a couple people. When the king sent for you, you were broken too. And the truth of the matter is, if you would have been left to your own capabilities and to your own devices, you would have never made it to the kingdom. But the king did not rely on your resources. He sent his own boy. He sent a representative. He said, look, I'm going to bring you to the kingdom. See, me couldn't get to the kingdom by myself. No, Mephibosheth couldn't get there by himself. So the king not only asked about him, but he sent for him, and then he brought him to where he was. You got to understand something. I understand that we're in this new age church, but the king is not coming out of the kingdom. Anyway, let me get to it. That ain't even a message. Unable, unclean, unworthy. He equates himself to a dead dog. But the king sought for him. The king sought for him. So I want y'all to think about 3 simple things this morning. If you don't learn anything else, learn these 3 simple things. Come, sit, stay. Somebody say dog years. Come, sit, stay. Oh yeah, we about to get it. Come. Advance towards the call. I'm preaching already. I said advance towards the call. Understand arrival is essential and shifting is evident. I say arrival is essential and shifting is evidence. Anytime you answer the call, there's an automatic shift. Anytime you answer the call, there's an automatic shift. And for you to answer the call, that means that you have to advance towards the call. It doesn't matter if you pull towards the call. It doesn't matter if you drag towards the call, if you crawl towards the call, if you reluctantly come towards the call, as long as you come to the call. Does that make sense to everybody? So advance toward the call. Say advance toward the call. Yeah. Say shifting is evident. I want you to know that you may not be where you yet want to be in God, but a shift has already happened in your life. I said a shift has already happened in your life. Is that all right? Verse 4, the king asked where Mephibosheth was. The invitation of a king is never without provision. I said the invitation of a king is never without provision. Get this, favor can fetch. I said favor can fetch. Anybody just been somewhere, you wasn't really looking for it, but favor came and got you. I said favor came and got you. I know the lingo might seem a little bit weird, but anybody can celebrate God and say, I'm so glad that favor fetched me. Somebody say favor can fetch. Let me tell you how this works out. That God loved the world so much that he sent his only begotten son to come get us. So he literally favored us. So you know what he told the master of the universe? Fetch. Oh, come on now. Somebody say sit. Yeah. Sit, Ubu. Sit. Good dog. Sit. Understand, arrangements have already been made. Arrangements have already been made. Anytime that you get a reservation for a restaurant, they set aside a table for you to eat at. Yeah. And then when they welcome you into the restaurant, they bring you to your seat. They bring you to your seat. So what we want you, what the king is saying is, I invited you here to sit down. I invited you here to take your seat. Somebody say sit. Yeah, sit. Quick tangent, again, intentional. I was talking to a good friend of mine this morning, And we began to discuss a little bit about this because I was so excited about the message. And I told him, this is what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to say, come, sit, stay. And he said, you know what? That brings to mind something that happened to me a few days ago. He has a dog, and his dog is getting older. But he says he's a relatively good dog. Calls him Big C. He says this dog, I had him in his cage. And I was getting ready to pull him out of his cage. This will minister to you. He said, I was getting ready to pull him out of his cage, but he wouldn't sit. And as long as he wouldn't sit, I said, you got to stay in your cage until you sit. And then he told me, he said, some people are stuck because they won't sit. That's better than y'all saying amen to. He said, some people are stuck because they won't sit. You're asking God to get you out of a situation, but you won't sit. We can't sit still in church. Let me help me, oh Lord. We can't sit still even in church. And God is just saying, sit, and I'll bring you out of whatever you're into. Because sometimes I put you in a place. Yeah. Sometimes I put you in a place so that you can hear my voice. And if you would just begin to appreciate that when I tell you something, I'm telling it to you for your own good. He went further to say, but normally the dog actually likes to respond to the commands that is given to him because he knows that there's a reward on the other side of the command. And so the dog's saying, oh, man, if I do this, I don't know what's going to happen, but I know it's going to be a reward. Somebody say sit. Yeah. Verse 7, the king declared, you shall eat bread at my table continually. Understand, debility does not dictate acceptance into the kingdom. I'll say it again. Debility does not dictate acceptance in the kingdom. I know we're only thinking physical, but I'm talking about a whole lot of debilities. You working with debilities right now. You don't think like everybody thinks. Sometimes that can be seen as a debility. You don't talk like everybody talks. Sometimes that can be seen as a debility. You understand what I'm saying? Moses had a debility. He couldn't talk right, but that didn't stop him from being able to do ministry. I can't run like I used to run. That's a debility. I know. You know, got a little hoary head. You know, got a little season up there, so you can't run like you used to be. So you don't have the same abilities that you did have, but now you have a debility that you still have to work through. But the king is saying, I don't care about your debility. I'm telling you to come to the table. I don't care about your debility, what you're unable to do. Your body, Mephibosheth, is actually unable to walk. You couldn't walk if you wanted to. And sometimes we're looking for God to change our situation. Mephibosheth, to what we know, his condition didn't change. I didn't say that his legs were healed. I just said that he had a place at the table. So sometimes we want things to switch around, but we're still in the wrong company. How many know that your situation can turn around, but if you ain't at the right table, then you will get food poisoning? Y'all ain't hearing me. I say that your situation can change and things can turn around, but you can still wind up in the wrong place. But he's got a place at the table. And he says here, verse 7, you shall eat bread at my table continually. Whatever you can't do, there's some things that you can't do. I need you to be honest with yourself. Say, there are some things that I just can't do. I also want you to accept the truth of the matter is there are some things that you will never be able to do. There are some things which you will never be able to do, but that is no hindrance on your entry to the kingdom. We think so many other times that debility is denying us into ministry, and it's not debility, it's disobedience. Obedience is your passport. Do you understand what I'm saying? Verse 8 says, what is your servant that you should look upon such a dead dog as I? Brings me to the scripture. What is man that thou art mindful of him? Who am I that the king should ask for me? What is man that thou art mindful of him, or the Son of Man that you should visit him. Why would you send your son for us? Huh? Who am I that you would visit? Who am I that you would send your angels? Who am I that you would send your representatives and your ambassadors to? Who am I? Say, who am I? Who am I? And this ain't no false humility. This is for real right here. He's like, who am I? Because he sees himself as a dead dog. You have to understand that dogs were considered unclean. Dogs were considered unclean. Amen. So dead dog is a term of reproach or humiliation. Thus, worthless and suited to be cast out. So if a dog is considered unclean, alive, imagine what a dead dog is viewed as in this society. The dog is already considered unclean. He says, I don't just feel like a dog, I feel like a dead dog. And if you know anything about Hebraic culture, is that they don't really deal with dead things a whole lot. You understand what I'm saying? You are considered unclean if you touch a dead thing. From their culture, you are considered unclean if you touch a dead thing. You couldn't go to the feast back in the day if you had messed with a dead body in so much time. You had to be ceremonially clean. And see, that was part of the problem with the old church. People were ceremonially clean. Yeah, you were ceremonial clean. Yeah, you were ceremonial. You had the dress from your head to your toe, but you was nasty on the inside. You wore all white with the gloves and the thick stockings, but you were only ceremonially clean. You weren't really sanctified. Your attire does not dictate you holy. Only your heart does. Rend your heart, not your garment, for the people that need word. You understand what I'm saying? Now, that ain't no license for you to go out there and be crazy now. All right? Behave yourself unseemly. You understand what I'm saying? So, dogs were considered unclean. Imagine how you felt as a dead dog. Where to be cast out. And he's already coming from the same because he's already talking not only from feeling cast out, but literally being cast out. He is not in the kingdom. Say he's not in the kingdom. He's not in the kingdom, but the king wants him in the kingdom. The king wants him in the kingdom. I need you to look at how David starts looking for Mephibosheth. David, King David, starts looking for Mephibosheth, not by saying, does Jonathan have a son? No. Let me work with you over here. He didn't start out looking for Mephibosheth by looking for Jonathan's son. Everybody know that him and Jonathan was real good friends. They was boys. I heard one pastor break it down. They had such a relationship that some people are scared of talking about it. Because the word says point blankly that his love for Jonathan was better than that of a woman. But if you understand what he's talking about, he's not talking about homosexuality, people. He's talking about the brotherhood that they shared was so much that it's like, because you got to understand that David only had one friend. He had plenty of women. It's better than a woman. I got women for days. I got women for days. I got women for every day of the week. If one of them act crazy, I'll see you next year. So you got to understand why Jonathan means so much to him. He's like, but he didn't go looking for his good friend Jonathan's son. He said, who came out of Saul's loins? Who came out of the person who was trying to kill me? The king didn't come looking for his friend's sons. He came looking for his enemies. He said, is there anybody out of the house of Saul? Now understand where Jonathan came from. But I'm not coming looking for Jonathan first. I'm coming looking for who came out of son. I came looking for Jonathan second. Y'all ain't see how that worked out. Y'all ain't see how that worked out. He said, because the Lord says, David is a man after God's own heart. He said, I come because the well don't need a physician. The sick do. This man is incapacitated. I don't even know that yet, but I know this much. Where's the people out of Saul's house? Because if we be honest, that's whose house that we came out of. We didn't come out of a friend. We didn't come out. I'm not talking about your lineage. Get out of that. I'm talking about where you came from, the lineage in your mind. In your mind, you were not serving God from day one. You were in Saul's house. And he said, send for the one, give me somebody. I just want to be kind to something. I told you a favor will come fetch you. I just want to show the kindness of God for somebody out of Saul's house. I dare one of y'all to find somebody that you couldn't stand and go do something for them. I dare one of you for somebody who came after your life to go send for them. Saul came after his life on several occasions, but he said, bring me somebody out of Saul's house. That's what the word says. I ain't got to make it up. But you talking about David. Stick with me. So come get that. And these dogs that are now being invited, this dog brother that's being invited who's lame in his feet. So not only is he a dead dog, but he's a lame dog too. Now what good is a dead, lame dog? First of all, you got to figure out in your mind, why does lameness count when he's dead? Check this out. We're living in a world where more of us in the spirit have the sixth sense than we would realize. We see dead people. But the dead people are walking. And this is what's happening with Mephibosheth. He's a dead man, a dead dog, not walking. Do you understand what I'm telling you? He's a dead dog. But guess what? In spite of all that, guess who's coming to dinner? Guess who's coming to dinner? Look at your neighbor and encourage somebody, say you may be seated. Yeah. Somebody shout out, stay. Stay. See, because the thing about it is, he said, come to me, all ye that are heavy laden, and you have burden, and I'll give you rest. Y'all remember that? It said, come to me, but the first command was come. Nothing is going to happen unless you come first. You got to come in your mind here, and then you got to move with your body and come towards the call. However that works out. Does that make sense to everybody? So then you had to sit. Because in order for me to tell you and for me to do for everything that I need to do for you, you got to sit still. If you're going to come up in ministry, you got to sit still and be taught first. So many of us get a call to ministry and then want to go run. You get a call to ministry, then you want to go run when you haven't sat anywhere. Somebody say, sit down. Sit. Then he says, stay. Because it's one thing to sit and then move around. It's another thing when you stay. So he says, stay. Understand the position has already been specified. The position has been specified, and the position is permanent. Now hear this. Verse 11, David said concerning Mephibosheth, he shall eat at my table as one of the king's sons. Y'all got to help me here. He said, he shall eat at the table as one of the king's sons. I know you felt like a dead dog, but come sit at the king's table and be one of his sons. I know what you felt like. I know how everybody treated you. I know how everybody ostracized you. I know how you felt like an outcast, but not only come sit to the table, but sit like one of my sons. See, because what has happened is we've been invited to the king's table, but still eat like dogs. He says, come sit to the table as one of the king's sons. And he said he shall, say he shall. He shall eat at my table as one of the king's sons. Understand, the invitation of the king cancels the exile. God help me. The invitation of the king cancels the exile. So whatever you felt that you were excluded from, once the king invites you, you've now been accepted into the kingdom. Too many of us want to be in the world, and the world is not coming into the kingdom. Because when we come out of the world into the kingdom, we have to be transformed. Something different has to happen. We have to pledge allegiance. Anybody that comes into this country legally has to pledge allegiance. Now we know we got a whole bunch of illegal folk. Trying to reap the benefits. I'm just talking about what I'm talking about. But don't want to be a part, don't want to do it the right way. There are some people that are still sitting in ministries that don't want to do it the right way. They want all the benefits. They want all the benefits, but they don't want to do what it takes to do it the right way. You understand what I'm saying? Because this country was built on immigrants coming in. Amen. And some other stuff too, but it was built on immigrants. Whether they pulled them in, whether they dragged them in, whether they slaved them in, the country was built on that. Do you not know that the kingdom is built the same way? Because he took you from whatever your foreign mindset was and domesticated you. Y'all ain't even hear what I'm saying. I say he domesticated you. Because if you're not domesticated, you can't stay in the kingdom. You're just going to be a wild dog. Or a mutt. Yeah. The position is permanent. Say the position is permanent. So the invitation of the king cancels the exile, clears the obscurity, and constitutes the standing of the called. Let me say that again. The invitation of the king cancels the exile, it clears the obscurity, and then it constitutes the standing of the call. When the king calls you, he's going to constitute your standing. See, what happens is we've been called and we haven't been constituted because we didn't sit long enough. But when the king constitutes your standing, y'all got to hear what I'm saying. When the king constitutes your standing, it doesn't matter that you were lame. It doesn't matter if you are lame. It doesn't matter if you are unable to do some things that other folk can do, because the king has constituted your standing. When the king says you belong at the table, doesn't matter what anybody else says. Because you're not eating at the king's table as a dog. You only eat at the king's table as a son. You only eat at the king's table as a son. Do you understand what I'm saying? Somebody say dog years. Yeah. The Canaanite woman understood. I know. The Canaanite woman understood even dogs can eat crumbs falling from their master's table. Her faith expelled the demons out of her daughter, right? He said, I ain't seen no faith like this. This is what Yeshua said about that Canaanite woman. The Canaanite woman came to him, and notice what the disciples were trying to do. The disciples were trying to shoo her away. Go on now. If you don't know the dog, if you don't know the dog, it don't matter how friendly the dog is. If you don't, go on now. You're bugging me, dog. Doggone, dog. Go on now. So the disciples are trying to shoo the dog away. But the dog comes anyway, begging to say, look, even, and Yeshua is testing her here, and he says, it is not fit that the dogs take the children's bread. Huh? It's not fit. She said, that's true. It ain't fit. But even the dogs can take the crumbs from the master's table. But see, the thing that you got to understand, you got to have some revelation on that word. Because some people still stuck on the crumbs. No, I'm not stuck on the crumbs. That was my humility. Because even though I was lame, I still found a way to get on my face. See, Mephibosheth, he was lame, but it said he prostrated himself. I don't know how a man who could barely walk found a way to get down on his knees and to bow before the king. Because he was humble. He said, I don't know why you're calling me here, but I know who you are. Does that make sense to everybody? So he bowed before the king. And he bowed before the king. And the king was like, man, you're going to eat at my table continually. Watch this, what happens with the Canaanite woman. The Canaanite woman said, even the dogs can take the crumbs from the master's tables. Is that not what she said? But didn't he just say that it wasn't fit for the dogs to get the children's bread? But you got to understand some more of the word. Healing is the children's bread. Her daughter got healed. Let me come over here. I said her daughter got healed. She didn't get crumbs that a dog gets. She got the bread that the children got. She sat at the table because her daughter and her position was changed for life. Because the demons were cast out. The demons were cast out. Say she got her healing. Say she got the bread, not the crumbs. Forget the crumbs, get the bread. Forget the crumbs, get the bread. Forget the crumbs, get the bread. But when you get the bread, understand how you have to sit down at the table. You don't sit down at the table and eat like a dog. You sit down at the table as one of the king's sons. Is that blessing anybody? Get this, it's one thing to receive an invitation for an occasion. It's another to be positioned for life. It's one thing to say, yeah, you can come eat with me this time. You know, because I feel like blessing you. Come on, sit down. You know how we get. I feel like blessing you. Come on, sit down. But when the king says, no, you shall eat at my table continually. Continuous. Say continually. Tell somebody you got a place at the table. Now look at somebody else, say, enjoy your stay. The king declared restoration and provision. The king decreed restoration and provision. So not only did he say, you're going to eat at my table continually, but I'm going to restore to you the lands of your father. I know your father didn't do, your grandfather actually. I know that your forefathers, I know that your people didn't always do right. I know that your people left me a long time ago. But I'm going to restore to you what they should have had. Oh my God, not even what you have. I'm going to restore to you what they should have had. Because not only will God bless your life, he will bless your legacy. God will bless your legacy despite your condition. Say he's still lame, but he's at the king's table. How did the dog, the dead dog, the lame dog, make it to the king's table? He became a son because he came towards the call. He sat down and he stayed. That makes sense to anybody? But I'm not done yet. Mephibosheth means dispeller of the shame. Mephibosheth means dispeller of the shame. You were born to dispel the shame from your legacy. You were born to dispel the shame from where you came from. from what your people did, from what your grandfather did. Because some of the stuff we're looking around like my father was a great man. See, Lord, this teaching goes deeper than maybe I can even teach it. You got to understand, sometimes we're looking at our parents and we're saying we have pretty good parents. And we're wondering where all this stuff comes from. How many people were raised in a house where they were taught the gospel but didn't experience the grace? I was taught it. I can't look at my father and say something was wrong with my father. Why am I dealing with these things that I'm dealing with? Maybe it's your granddaddy them. But the king came looking for whoever came out of Saul's house. Anybody glad that the king came looking for somebody out of Saul's house? I don't know about you, but I'm glad he came looking for me. I'm not done yet. Unable in his own body, yet brought to the king at the word of the king. Say, at the word of the king. The king sent for him. The king didn't come out the kingdom. Bear with me here. He said, look, go get him. Somebody say fetch. Fetch. Go get him. Bring him back here. And they brought him back there. So unable in his own body, yet brought to the king at the word of the king. Unworthy in his own eyes, yet sought by the king. It's one thing when you're unwanted by people. But it's another thing for you to just feel unwanted in yourself. Because people are going to say all kind of crazy stuff, but when you feel unwanted in yourself, he called himself a dead dog. I don't know what happened in all of his life. We don't get all the details, but I know how he felt. And he felt like a dead dog. So sometimes welcoming the unwanted, we have to understand that the Father is welcoming us even when we feel unwanted. Because we talked about before how Leah was unwanted. She experienced being unwanted, right? Here is Mephibosheth. We don't know what all his experiences were, but we know that he felt unwanted. Not necessarily because of somebody did something to him, but how he felt about himself. I need some real people in here that sometimes just be honest today. Be like, sometimes I didn't want myself. I was unhappy with me. I felt like a dead dog because of what I couldn't. Because of what happened before I even got here. And I felt unwanted. But the king, unclean in his own mind, he was unworthy in his own eyes, but he was sought by the king. He was unclean in his own mind, yet seated at the king's table. Get this, I decree this over anybody's life who's willing to accept it. The shame of our limitations is over. The shame of our limitations are over because you don't get wrapped around in your ability. It's never been a problem with your ability. That doesn't get you. That doesn't hamper you. You can work with what you're able to do, but what do you spend most time being negative towards yourself about? The stuff that you just can't do. I can't do it, and especially if we can't do it like somebody else. I can't do this like that person, somebody. Say, that's a lame notion. But even if you can't, you can still sit at the king's table. One more note. Elevation does not distance itself from compassion. Oh, if don't nothing else bless you, this will. Elevation does not distance itself from compassion. Because see, what happens is we've lived in some dog years. Anybody done lived some dog years. But we've lived some dog years, and sometimes the King has brought us to a table. And he says, come, sit, stay. And we got there, and we sat there, and we started eating like a king. We started eating like one of the king's sons. But then, as time went on, we started forgetting that we felt like a dog. And when we got into position, when the dogs came around, we said, shoo, get away. We forgot that he came and got us. Oh yeah, you fishermen that are saying shoo, remember who came and got you. You fishermen who are saying shoo, remember who came and found you when you were fishing for your daddy. You was collecting taxes for the man when I came and got you. Who were you when God came and got you? I bet you felt like a dog if you really think about it. Elevation does not distance itself from compassion. 1 Samuel 24:14, David said to Saul, after whom is the king of Israel come out? After whom dost thou pursue? After a dead dog, after a flea. Do y'all get this? David said, who am I that the king of Israel should come after me to pursue me, a dead dog and a flea? David remembered what it felt like to feel like a dog. And his position didn't make him forget where he came from. Some of us have gotten in position, but we forgot the dog years. We don't want to welcome anybody into the kingdom because we forgot our dog years. We won't go minister to the homeless person with the fleas because we forgot our dog years. Now, they came out of different situations, but they still both experienced some dog years. You got to understand, it might be altogether possible that Mephibosheth was supposed to be a king because his grandfather was a king, but he was living like a peasant. Oh my God. And you just came out the house of Jesse. You was on the other side of that mountain. Nobody saw you that way until you were brought from behind the mountain. Until you were called into the kingdom. But see, David experienced some church hurt. He was in the kingdom and got chased out of it. Because the king, the one the people chose, saw David as a threat instead of an asset. Don't ever serve under a king that sees you as a threat instead of an asset. Don't ever serve under a leader that can only see you as a threat instead of an asset. You couldn't even get saved before this boy was singing to you. You couldn't even get saved before the boy was singing to you. Now you want to kill him? So not only could he sing, but he could also kill. I know you killed your thousands, but he killed tens of thousands. But you can't see him as an asset. You only see him as a threat. See, most kings would not invite their predecessors' lineage into the kingdom because they would have viewed them as a threat. But you got to understand, when you're the child of the Most High God, when you're a king under the King of Kings, you don't see anybody as a threat and you don't see anybody as a dog. You say, come on in and sit at the table. When God repositions you from the doghouse to the king's palace, don't forget the dog years. Don't forget the dog years. Don't forget the dog years. King David, for y'all theologians that may be in the building right now, oh, you preaching David? No, I'm preaching the king. You trying to spiritualize the text? No, I'm preaching the king. Say he preaching the king. Say he talking about me. Now hear this. I got that from my daddy, you know. Now hear this. Hebrews 4:15 says, we have not a high priest which cannot be touched with the feelings of our infirmity. I said, we have not a high priest that cannot be touched with the feelings of our infirmities. But our high priest was a high priest, not out the order of the Levites. He was out of the order of Melchizedek, which means that not only was he a priest, but he was also a king. He was also a king. And not just a king, but the King of Kings. Last word that I'll leave you go. The kingdom of heaven is like a king who prepared a wedding banquet for his son. Furthermore, blessed are they which are called unto the marriage supper of the Lamb. Come, sit, stay. Not only are you welcomed, you're wanted. You're wanted. You're wanted. Say I'm wanted. Say I'm wanted. So, the word of the Most High God is saying to us today, I don't want your lame excuses anymore. I don't want your lame excuses anymore. Because I've seen your dog years. And I know where you come from. I know who your people are. I know what your history is. I know how you've been feeling because I'm not a high priest that hasn't been touched with all the feelings of your infirmities. I know you felt like a dead dog, but I felt how you feel. David did not live the same life as Mephibosheth, but he knew that feeling when he saw it. I like to think that right before he told him to sit at his table, that he remembered when he felt like a dog and like a flea. What is man that thou art mindful of him? Who am I, this dead dog, that not only would you call for me, but you would send for me? I don't think that you heard what I said. He didn't just call you, ladies and gentlemen. He sent for you. He sent for you to bring you, though you felt unwanted, to the kingdom. But he didn't want you to just sit and eat this one meal. He said, come, sit, stay. I want you to change your mind this morning. And I want you to stay at the king's table. There's no reason for you to eat anywhere else. And there's no reason for you to eat like a dog. There's no reason for you to any longer accept crumbs for subsistence. You have to be willing. You have to be willing. You have to be humble. Because your lame excuses won't stop you from worshiping. Your lame excuses can't stop you from worshiping. Because when he prostrated himself before the king, that is one sense of worship. He respected the king for who he was. Who is your servant? No matter how great that you have become or think that you have become, the king called you when you were a dog, when you were dead, when we were dead in our sins, when we were lame in our excuses, when we had so many impediments and inabilities. He said, I've seen your dog years. I've seen your dog years. And I remember my own. Because, see, I was treated like a dog too. I came to my own. And my own said, shoo. Somebody say dog years. Say they're over. But I won't forget them. That's your task. That's what you do. Go find the dogs. Fetch.